The Kansas City Chiefs continue to lock down core players, and they might not be done. We talk about that. If the Lions are in trouble after a string of defensive line injuries, and so much more coming up on Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On NFL. Welcome in to the show. I am not the madman, Tyler Rowland. I am Kevin Ostreicher filling in for the madman today. We're still going to give you that double shot of espresso in the morning. Of course, we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thanks so much for being here with us today, making Locked On NFL a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. And if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And here we are again on Locked On NFL, breaking down all the biggest stories around the NFL with the help of our Locked On NFL experts. And here with me today is Louis DiBiase, the host over at Locked On Eagles. And Louis, football is in the air. I know for both of the teams we cover, the Ravens and the Eagles, training camp for vets begins on Tuesday. I just can't believe we're here.
No, I can't either. The Eagles just had their Super Bowl ring ceremony, so kind of putting a final cap on the 2024 season. Time to go for a repeat maybe, but I'm just glad football's back, whether it's Eagles football, Ravens football. The entire NFL's back this week, and I can't wait.
It is a great feeling. Football's in the air, and as the weather, hopefully, at least where I am, starts to get a little cooler soon. It's been brutally hot. You will get it all the way back to football season. I cannot wait. But Lou, we have a jam-packed episode here today. I'm excited to talk about it. In the final part of the show, we'll get your thoughts on the Locked On NFL Top 100. Jalen Hurts, maybe a little disrespected on that list, so I'll give you a chance to share your thoughts on that situation. Good. Plus, for the 49ers, Brock Purdy, we'll talk about his ranking or lack thereof on the Top 100 list. In the second part of the show, the Detroit Lions, they might be in a little bit of trouble here with some defensive line injuries. We'll get Matt Derry's thoughts on that, and Louis and I will talk about the state of the Lions. Plus, the Colts are such an interesting case study with Anthony Richardson versus Daniel Jones. We'll get into all that. But in the first part of the show, we'll get to the Commanders' move for Von Miller. But Louis, the Chiefs just continue to lock down core members. I know that Chiefs fans might have been a little nervous about Trey Smith and if that deal was going to get done by the deadline, but the Chiefs got it done. And not only that, word on George Karlaftis dropped. 4 years, $93 million for George Karlaftis. Extremely well-deserved. And right now, I want to play a clip from Ryan Tracy of Locked On Chiefs reacting to Trey Smith. But after that, Louis, I want to talk about the Chiefs, where they are with their younger core, and if they might not be done.
The Kansas City Chiefs just blew up the guard market by giving Trey Smith a 4-year, $94 million contract. But that's not the key. $70 million guaranteed locks up the interior on the right-hand side for Patrick Mahomes. And that is the job. That is why this happened. To keep Patrick Mahomes happy, comfy, and ready to be all the Mahomes he can be. Trey Smith plays in that plan. He elevates Creed Humphrey as Creed elevates him. They're going to sort out the left-hand side. What used to be Joe Thuney's spot is now likely going to be manned by Kingsley Suamataia, which comes with some of its risks on its own, but the Chiefs are definitely invested into making the most out of their interior offensive line as they continue to look at the tackle position as well. Trey Smith locks that down and keeps you ready for the future. We'll have more of it all on Locked On Chiefs. Make sure you check us out.
I think this was imperative, Louis, for the Chiefs, and you know this firsthand, being as the team you cover made that offensive line look like a college offensive line in the Super Bowl. But Trey Smith is one of the most talented guards in this league. And like Ryan talked about, this resets the guard market and I think sets more precedent. And this is honestly with all deals today in today's league at all positions. You know, we saw the Karlaftis deal, and while he wasn't going to get TJ Watt money, we saw that deal happen last week. Still, it sets a precedent for maybe some of those second tier guys below the TJ Watts and the Myles Garrett. So we know all the conversations. So Travis Kelce's getting up there in age. Patrick Mahomes, he's getting older. The Chiefs, though, still have a lot of young talent, not to mention Trey McDuffie could be up for an extension here soon. The Chiefs should want to get that done probably as soon as possible, particularly with that Sauce Gardner extension coming down the pipeline here.
Yeah, I find it difficult for NFL teams a lot of the times after they pay a quarterback to really, when you were a Super Bowl contender in that rookie quarterback contract window and then you pay a Patrick Mahomes or a Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson, you got to draft really well and find that next core. I think Kansas City is underratedly so doing a good job at that on both sides of the ball with guys like Karlaftis, McDuffie, Trey Smith on the offensive line. I loved their first round pick, getting Simmons from Ohio State. I thought when healthy, he was the best tackle in that draft class. So it's a lot of money to pay a guard. Like you said, I mean, they're resetting the market, but when you saw what happened to Patrick Mahomes, he had no chance from the start of Super Bowl 59. When you look at what happened back in 2020 against Tampa Bay, the 2 Super Bowls that Kansas City lost in this dynastic run they've had over the last, 6 to 7 years, it was because Patrick Mahomes was running for his life. So Smith was obviously a part of that offensive line last year, but I think he was one of the pros of that unit throughout the majority of the year. So I think it is smart to lock up that interior. I think guards are a lot more important in the modern day NFL than maybe in the past because of how good of pass rushers are on the interior now, like a Jalen Carter that they had to see. So I think this was an important signing for Kansas City. And if they can get something out of Simmons this year, I don't know, maybe they can do exactly what they did in 2021. I do think Kansas City's offensive line for a bit there looked like, this might be they might be in real trouble. And I think they quickly rebuilt it and it helped them win back-to-back titles. We'll see if they can kind of have that luck again. I think they're making the right moves to get there.
I agree. And, with dynasties and trying to extend that window, of course, It starts with having an all-time quarterback, which we saw in New England for all those years with Tom Brady and obviously here with the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. But it's also about filling out your roster with quality pieces. And, you do have to make some tough decisions. We saw the Chiefs do that, trading Joe Thuney to Chicago, like Ryan talked about there. And, he's a big loss for them. But it's about how do you fill that? And part of it is rookie contracts, those 4 or 5 year rookie contracts at a fraction of the cost of these top guys. You can get that top end production. And that to me is really, really important. And you mentioned it with the pass rushers in the NFL today, particularly on the interior, the Chiefs, their draft. I loved it. You mentioned Josh Simmons, but also Omar Norman Lott was a really good pick for them. Jalen Royals, I thought, was a nice mid-round snag for them. They have a lot going for them right now. We actually had news of another signing, and that is from the NFC side, a team well, Louis, is a rival to the Eagles, the Washington Commanders. They pick up Von Miller. Von Miller heading to the Commanders. We'll hear what David Harrison had to say quickly, and then, Louis, I want to ask you how impactful you think this signing actually will be for the Commanders this season.
The oldest team in the league just got a little bit older, and we're okay with that. This is David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast. Sources confirming Wednesday night the news that broke nationally, Von Miller is headed to the Washington Commanders. And defensive coordinator Joe Wade Jr. has got to be incredibly pleased. He's already got a lot of new pieces, a lot of rotational players to use in his defensive scheme. But one thing that everybody noted that he was missing was an elite pass rusher to help him really tie everything together. The current NFL active players leader in sacks with 129.5 to his name will now join the Washington Commanders defense in hopes of helping them make it to the Super Bowl in San Francisco in February 2026. For more on this move and everything Washington Commanders, make sure you check out the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And over the weekend, $6.1 million was the number that is on that 1-year deal for Von Miller. So, I think, Louis, people look at the Commanders. Oh, Jaden Daniels, he's such a young player. The Commanders have a nice young core. Well, they have Jaden Daniels and then a lot of older guys like David alluded to there. So how much do you think, because defense, I think, is the name of the game for the Commanders this year. We saw how good the offense can be. They added Deebo Samuel, which again adds to that age gap between Daniels and the rest of the team. But Von Miller coming in, what do you think he has left in the tank for this Washington team?
Yeah, if he's a pass rushing specialist in obvious third and long situations, I think Von Miller can still give you some juice off the edge. In a vacuum, it's a good signing because they lost Dante Fowler, who led their team in sacks last year. Even though it's not an edge rusher on the interior, they lost Jonathan Allen. So they have some sack production to make up. But it's a weird approach. I know they're in a win now window now. They didn't think they would be this contender in year 2 of Daniels, and they're trying to take advantage of that by They got a quarterback on a rookie deal, bring in veterans that you can pay now to help maximize this window. But I think they're going a little bit too far with the aging veteran approach. Again, they're the oldest team in football, or top 2. And I think they just keep leaning into that. I think they're going a little bit too far. I like the Chiefs' approach of having guys grow with Mahomes long term. I feel like Washington's they're kind of taking the opposite approach right now, because I think they're drinking the Kool-Aid of making that NFC title. They're like, whoa, we're actually farther along than we thought. Let's bring in veterans now. So in a vacuum, they needed to bring in somebody like this on the edge, but I don't know how much Von Miller has left in the tank, to be honest.
Yeah, and like now that we know the deal's for $6.1 million, I mean, if he is healthy, Von Miller, I mean, that's buying value. But at the same time, your point, Louis, it almost feels like they're trying to go all in with this vet core with Jaden Daniels on a rookie contract. And then if it doesn't work, we might see a massive overhaul in the next couple of years.
It feels like old Washington kind of football. Like, this is what they used to do in the early 2000s, right? Bringing in Albert Haynesworth, Deion Sanders, a Bruce Smith. Like, I don't know. It feels weird, but I don't know. I guess I think they can win now, and that they're going for it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, but Jaden Daniels hopeful for a strong year or two after an incredible rookie season. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about another NFC contender, but these guys might be in a little bit of trouble. We'll talk about the Lions and more coming up next on Locked On NFL. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. And I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. Whether I'm placing the same game parlay or watching a bet ride in the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm a part of the action. Now, me being the Locked On Ravens guy, I am an Orioles fan, and it's been a rough go of it for the Orioles this year. Right now on FanDuel, the Orioles World Series odds, they are plus 55,000. So, hey, maybe you're feeling a little spicy about the Orioles, want to get in on that action. You can do that over on FanDuel. But if you're new to FanDuel, new customers, you can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. And this show is sponsored by Betterhelp. This is an ad by Betterhelp. Workplace stress is at an all-time high. 61% of the global workforce is reporting higher than normal stress levels. This summer is the perfect time to take small steps to focus on your wellness and manage the challenges that come with your workday. Of course, most of us can't just quit our jobs or take endless vacations, but we can start small, whether it's getting outside for a few minutes, adding movement into your day, or talking to someone who can help you navigate life's challenges. That's where BetterHelp comes in. Maybe you have a really busy schedule, or you might think you don't have time to schedule appointments, or maybe you wish you had more time to schedule appointments. The flexibility of online therapy makes it easy to fit sessions into a busy schedule no matter where you are. And that is an absolute game changer. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Back on Locked On NFL, Kevin Oestreicher and Louis DiBiase still here with you, talking NFL football again here, filling in for the Madman. Still giving you that double shot of espresso in the morning. Now, Louis, we know the Lions had an impressive year last year. They took the NFC North, albeit in a Week 18 showdown with the Minnesota Vikings, but they got in. Disappointing end to their season, but regardless, a lot of people are very in on the Lions, but they've had some injury issues on the defensive line. Lee McNeil not going to be available, and Levi Onwuzurike, there was word that he was being placed on the PUP list, but we got word over the weekend that he's actually going to miss the season with an ACL injury. So Matt Derry of Locked On Lions, he reacted to the news before it was known that Onwuzurike was going to be out for the year. This was just his reaction when he was on the PUP list, and Matt already sounds worried about it. So we'll hear what Matt has to say and then react to it coming up.
This is not good. This is not good at all. We're already talking about Noah Aleem. The top three interior defensive linemen on this team are Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader, and Levi Onwuzurike. You have to stop the run. You've got to get interior pressure on the quarterback as well in the passing game. And now Aleem McNeil, who's easily, after Aiden Hutchinson, the best defensive lineman on this team, is coming back from a torn ACL. You're not going to have him until November. and now we're not going to have Levi Onwuzurike until October. I'm concerned.
And I think he should be, Louis, at this point. I mean, we know the Lions are the popular pick for a team that's going to regress this season. I think that people look at Detroit, a lot of talent there. I don't think people are writing them off in any way, shape, or form, but winning as many games as they did last year in the division that they are in, that's a very hard thing to repeat. Plus the fact that on the defensive line, you're dealing with guys coming back from injuries, guys getting injured. And this is late in the offseason where, sure, there's still a couple guys available that can help you, but we're not in March where you don't just have your pick of the free agents to go and sign to replace a guy. So where's your panic meter right now on Detroit with this defensive line? And maybe you're already, thoughts you've had on them at this point.
I am kind of going with the consensus that I think this could be a regression. I don't know if they're going to miss the playoffs because they're still an extremely talented offense. I do really like their secondary still. Their second and third level of the defense has some pieces that I like, but they're in trouble on the defensive line. Again, two of their top pass rushers, best defensive linemen, are either out for a bit or coming off of serious injuries from last year. One of their other top three guys is now out for the year. I mean, do they bring back Zadarius Smith? I don't know what else they do. I mean, Matthew Judon's a free agent. Do they try to go out there and add like a Jadeveon Clowney type? Like you said, it's not March. I mean, we're almost at August at this point. So the reinforcements are not normally out there unless they go out and make some sort of trade. Like, do they go out and get Trey Hendrickson? I don't know. But also, you had on top of this, Ben Johnson is not there anymore.
Right.
Jared Goff in the past, I feel like he's been kind of a little overly reliant on his elite play callers at times. Still an elite offense from a personnel perspective, but that NFC North division is also really good. I think Chicago is going to be better this year. Green Bay is going to be healthier this year. Minnesota, who knows? But they won 14 games last year, and they're still extremely talented. I know they have a new quarterback, but that division's really good. Yeah, I don't normally like to go. I like to fade the consensus a lot of times with playoff predictions, but I might pick Detroit to miss. And if not, I would at least bet that they're not going to win the NFC North. I think there is a regression coming.
Yeah, I think with the North, to me, Minnesota had my favorite offseason. I think they improved drastically. Now, again, it's going to rely on J.J. McCarthy. That's a very hit or miss swing. So could go really well, could go really not well. But right. I think that they did enough to support him. And especially, I mean, what young quarterback is walking into a better situation than that with Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, plus the investments they made on that offensive line? That's huge for them. I think Green Bay is another team that you look at, and I expect them to be good again this year and maybe even take a little bit of a step forward. So that leaves Detroit is are they just going to lose more division games this year? There are a bunch of different conversations you can have about them.
Yeah, see, I don't think they're going to be a team that's suddenly only winning 7 to 8 games. Right. I think they'll likely make the playoffs, but I think if you're trying to win some money this year, it's a good bet to either pick them to lose the North or miss the playoffs in general. Because I don't know what kind of regression's coming, but I think there's some sort of regression. I don't think that's a super hot take. They've been a top 2 team in the NFC for years now. So, of course, a hard schedule as well. First place schedule is also going to impact that. The conference in general in the NFC, I think, is just getting a little bit stronger. I think the quarterback play is getting better. So naturally, you think it's going to come down. And I really do think Ben Johnson I know, again, Jared Goff still has, Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams, and he's got Gibbs and Montgomery, and Laporta hopefully will be better in year 3. Get closer to who he was as a rookie than year 2. But I think Ben Johnson really did have a positive impact on Goff. So we'll see what happens. But their defensive line has been in trouble for years now, and it doesn't look like it's getting better. And outside of having a great quarterback, what's maybe the second most important part of being a Super Bowl contender? It's having a legit and consistent pass rush. Detroit's
going to have a tough go this year, but they're also a good team. So we'll see how they are able to, hopefully put together a good 2025. Another team that's put together a good 2025, maybe not to the same extent of the Commanders or the Lions or the Chiefs. That's the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts are so interesting to me, Louis. Obviously, we've gotten the word that Anthony Richardson's shoulder is okay. And that, at this point, we're wondering, is it going to be Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson to lead this team in 2025? Could either of those guys give the Colts a chance to make the playoffs in what is, in my opinion, a decently loaded AFC conference? So Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts talked about the Colts situation right now. I want to play that and then ask your thoughts about if the Colts are playoff contenders or not.
But do you feel the Colts can make the playoffs this year? I certainly think they can make the playoffs this year. I mean, we've seen the last 2 years that they were 1 game short with Gardner Minshew. They were like a game and a half short last year with whatever the heck was going on at quarterback last year. They have been able to be good enough to be in the playoff hunt with really, really bad quarterback play the last couple of years. I mean, I guess Minshew wasn't really bad quarterback play, but like below average quarterback play the last couple of years. So if they can just get that with an improved roster around the quarterback. I mean, if you're looking at Charvarius Ward, Cameron Bynum, and all the additions they made, Tyler Warren coming in, this is a team that should be able to compete for a playoff spot. So I certainly think they can make the playoffs. I'm not going to say that they will, but I perfectly think they can make the playoffs this year. They're certainly not in like that bottom tier of like a tanking team that has no chance. Like they certainly can push for a playoff spot. It's just how realistic that push is going to be.
So roster around the quarterback, and Zach makes good points. I mean, you brought in some additions to your secondary. You know, Tyler Warren coming in will help whichever quarterback is starting this year for them. But, you know, more often than not, you do need to have at least somewhat good quarterback play to make a run. I think they could maybe sneak in as a wild card, or honestly, Louis, that AFC South division, I don't even know what to think. So they could maybe make a surprise run at the division title. But which quarterback do you think gives the Colts a better shot right now? Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson?
It's Daniel Jones, but the Colts need to decide who they want to be. Do they want to be the team that they used to be after Andrew Luck when they refused to hit the reboot button and they signed Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan, Jacoby Brissett? Like they just kept trying to do the bare minimum, right, to try to make the playoffs because they were building something with Andrew Luck and that threw them off. Do they want to be the Pittsburgh Steelers and just win 8 to 10 games a year? Like, I guess then you go with the Daniel Jones approach, and I feel like they're getting close to that. I think they're losing patience with the Anthony Richardson project, especially Shane Steichen, who probably wants to keep his job, and Chris Ballard, too. He doesn't have probably, especially now with a change in ownership, like does he have the same kind of like leash that he used to have? So I think they probably are in a win-now mindset with Daniel Jones, but I don't think that's the best decision for their future. I would try to give Anthony Richardson one more shot. If he's not the guy, then move forward, find somebody else in an upcoming draft. But who has a better shot of getting the Colts 8 to 9 wins this year and maybe sneaking in as a 6 or 7 seed? I guess it's Daniel Jones. I just don't see the point in that. Like, I think we all knew, too, Anthony Richardson was going to be a long-term project, and I know it's been a disaster, and I get why you'd kind of be ready to bail on it. But I would at least see it through one more time, and just because the upside's still there. I don't see really the long-term benefit of starting Jones.
Yeah, to me, the way that they've handled it has been not great. And look, I know Richardson did himself no favors with the whole tapping his helmet to come out.
Yeah, that's why it's hard I can understand why they would be ready to move forward, but I
mean, at this point, the option isn't great in Daniel Jones, and there's nothing for your long-term prospects. The roster around him isn't necessarily like an Eagles or a Ravens or a Chiefs or any of that. So it's kind of difficult to gauge. Like, okay, is there a reset button
Brock
coming?
Purdy, like, oh, we were giving up on this Trey Lance project because we're ready and Purdy can do it. I don't even know if Daniel Jones is that caliber of player.
Right. The Colts are I don't know what it's going to look like for them, but we'll talk about. I don't know what it's crazy, but. Brock Purdy, something we're going to talk about in the final part of the show, and this is now going to be Louis' time to stand up for Mr. Jalen Hurts, so stay tuned. A lot coming your way on Locked On NFL. First, the show is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average, in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Back on Locked On NFL with Louis DiBiase. I am Kevin Allstriker. Louis, the network, our network, the Locked On Podcast Network, released our NFL Top 100 list. This is list season, by the way. You know that early to mid-July, you're waiting for training camps to start up, and so our network put together a list. We all did some rankings, and we put the top. Literally, I did it. It was 1 through 100. You ranked everybody. You left some people out that maybe you didn't think were worthy of the list. Now, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Myles Garrett, Joe Burrow. Those were the top 5. Saquon Barkley, shout out to you and Locked On Eagles. Louis, number 10, getting in there. Best running back in the NFL, according to our Locked On NFL experts. But the one that everybody, I think, is talking about, one of the biggest headlines here is that Jalen Hurts. You see him right there, number 46. He beats out Baker Mayfield by 1 spot. But you can see some of the players that were ranked ahead of him, such as Kirby Joseph, Cam Hayward. You go a little bit further down the list in at least the quarterback position. Matt Stafford, Justin Herbert, Jaden Daniels, and even in the 11 through 20 range where there were no quarterbacks, it's other guys like Lane Johnson and A.J. Brown, both who are Jalen Hurts' teammates. So still good Eagles representation. But, Louis, what'd you think about Jalen Hurts being rated at number 46?
I want to say first off, people are completely delusional about who Justin Herbert is compared to Jalen Hurts. I think people are ranking Justin Herbert high because they want him to be the player that he's not. And I think Jalen Hurts, because stylistically, he's elite in a different way than Justin Herbert, Matt Stafford, even Lamar and Burrow and Allen and Mahomes. Because of that, and because he has a great support system, he's kind of docked for that when other quarterbacks aren't. I think he's almost held to a different standard. Look, I don't think Jalen Hurts is better than Lamar, Burrow, Allen, Mahomes. I'm realistic about who he is. He's a much more inconsistent passing quarterback than those guys. But eventually, on-field results have to matter more than it does in these rankings. Eventually, Hurts's strengths, I think, need to be valued more in these conversations. Like, again, does he look the part of what you're used to seeing in a franchise quarterback? Like a Justin Herbert? No. But he's still equally as productive. It's just in a different way. A lot of it's in rushing production. I think his strengths aren't valued enough. He's not always a top 5 player, but he is in the biggest moments. He has outplayed, I think, a top 2 player of all time in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. I think that needs to matter more in these conversations than it actually does. In the NFC Championship, that's one of the best games he's had. He always steps up in the biggest moments, and I think that's a huge part of the conversation when talking about quarterback. And I know again, people don't give him credit because of the offense he's in, but then Justin Herbert's in an offense that doesn't have that support system, and he gets the excuse. So we can't evaluate the quarterback in a bad offense. We can't evaluate the one in a good one. So who are we supposed to fairly judge? It's kind of confusing. I think Jalen, people almost see like he's a Brock Purdy, that if he was in another offense that wasn't as talented, that he couldn't carry them. And that part I don't agree with. I think he is on another level than those kind of guys. He's entrenched as my 5th quarterback in football, and I'm not wavering off that. To be the Super Bowl MVP and be almost in the 50th mark is, I think, kind of disrespectful.
I think these lists are so interesting because I think everybody has a different interpretation of what to base the lists off of.
Yeah, is it who was the best in 2024? Yes. Is it who you're starting a franchise with? Is it accomplishment based? I totally agree.
And so, and this is for every list because, there are a bajillion of them that are out right now. But in this particular case where it is in our list, I'll pull back up the top 10 here. It's Lamar, Mahomes, Allen, and then you get Myles Garrett in there and Burrow. But if you look at the top 4 quarterbacks, well, Louis, if we were talking about, okay, who's won the most Super Bowls? Well, Mahomes would be one, and then you get Stafford and Hurts, and it'd be that conversation. There's no debate about that. If it's who had the best 24, I think Mahomes was the worst of the big 4 quarterbacks, and he'd be at number 4 for me.
And that's the interesting part, Kevin, is why is he number 1 based on accomplishments, but then we don't use that as part of Jalen Hurts' thing? Why? Yeah. The only reason Mahomes is ahead of Lamar is because of team accomplishments, right? So it's a kind of almost a double standard.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it, and I think with Jalen in particular and some of these quarterbacks who are on stacked rosters, they get punished for having good teammates. They get punished for.
See, that's where I don't understand.
No. Oh man,
Mahomes has had the best play caller of all time as his head coach and the greatest tight end of all time his whole career. He's not docked like Jalen Hurts. Do you see what I mean? I feel like the the judgment for each player, the criteria is not the same. It's not consistent.
It's different for everybody. And look, I heard all year that, Derrick Henry was a huge factor in Lamar's season, and Lamar should be docked for
As
that.
if he didn't win the MVP.
Right.
Before that.
It's just all of it. It's real. And for Jalen, I mean, the quarterback that he was in 2023 when he had the turnover problems, the career high in interceptions, I still think people think that's who Jalen Hurts is. And it's difficult because, look, it was a down season for Jalen, right? It was. But now you also have to factor in, yes, he has won a Super Bowl, and he did get them there, and he had a better year. Like, he was better. He might not be the flashy, 40 passing touchdown quarterback, but that to me is not the only value that all these quarterbacks bring. I think that people are so caught up in the box score stats, and even when those box score stats are good, a la Lamar Jackson, there are just so many other different conversations that people try to make up.
And see, but you mentioned 2023, and that's interesting because Jalen Hurts was the MVP favorite after that Bills game when they were 10-1, and he was carrying them, and he was putting up more aggressive passing numbers, but he had more turnovers, so he was docked for that. And then this year, he had this more conservative approach because he didn't need to be that guy because he had Saquon Barkley. And he's kind of docked for that. I feel like he has shown he can elevate offenses in the past when Saquon wasn't there, kind of like Lamar before Derrick Henry. But yeah, again, I think you're right. I think it's people having their mind made up. They've made up in their mind what a franchise quarterback looks like, what the numbers are supposed to be, what the style of play is supposed to be. They're supposed to throw for 40 passing touchdowns instead of throwing for 23 and rushing for 15. But Jalen's still putting up the same amount of production when you combine both. And again, eventually, Kevin, production, simplistically put, production and winning, I think, needs to matter more in these equations. I think we've almost gotten too advanced analytical with quarterback, but I think people disagree with that clearly because he's number 46 on this list.
Right. And that's where you just see the disconnect is I feel like everybody even if there are set guidelines, I think everybody just has a different interpretation of what the lists are supposed to mean. You make a great point
about that. I think I would love to just define these lists a little bit more because if it's who you're starting a franchise with, I'd understand why Jalen's more in that 7 to 10 range than 1 through 5. But I thought we're ranking the best players based on accomplishments. I thought we're factoring everything, and it doesn't feel like that at times.
Sure. Yeah. It's a valid question about what the lists actually mean. Now, one player that was not on the list was San Francisco 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy. Not necessarily a super big shock to me, Louis, here, but the 49ers are another one of these interesting case studies like the Colts we talked about last segment. And the guys over at Locked On 49ers, they were talking about how loaded the roster is because San Francisco has some talented dudes on that roster, but Brock Purdy not being on the list. So I want to play that, then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Like you got Nick Bosa, top 5 at his position for sure. You got George Kittle, top 5, top 2, and not 2. He's number one best tight end in the league, especially according to the voting here. Fred Warner, best linebacker in the league. Trent Williams, top 3 offensive tackle in the league. Christian McCaffrey, top 2 running back in the league, or at the very least top 3. So you have a lot of guys who are really good at their position. Then you get to Brock Purdy, and he was essentially kind of a snub on our list, but not really a snub because it's hard to justify putting him over other guys who are so much, I don't even want to say so much better at their position, but they're just better and more highly ranked at what they do.
Niners roster has a lot of good players on it. I just think the equalizing factor in this, it's not exactly the same as the Vikings and McCarthy, but it's essentially like the quarterback position to me making or breaking how good or bad a season can be. It is Brock Purdy. So he didn't make the list here for the Locked On NFL Top 100. Where are you on Brock Purdy right now, Louis? Obviously, he has made it to a Super Bowl. He has that on his resume. It's nothing to laugh at. He's a good quarterback in my opinion. But is he the right quarterback for the 49ers? I mean, look, they paid him a lot of money, so he has to be at this point.
Yeah, so I actually think Brock Purdy is who everybody thinks Jalen Hurts is based on rankings, right? I think Purdy is someone that probably in another offense that doesn't have Kyle Shanahan, that's not as talented, he's probably not the quarterback you paid him. Like that money says he can elevate in almost any offense. I think Purdy's a better player outside of structure than he's given credit for, but I do think he is a limited player that if the 49ers continue to lose talent as they age, they're one of the oldest teams in the NFL. We'll see what happens with their receiving core with Debo gone, with Ayuk injured to start the year. I don't know what they have in Ricky Parasol. This is a good test. Like this early on this year, like, hey, we'll see what happens. Like, earn that money. But I'll say, Kevin, like last year was kind of proof that, hey, the team finally had a lot of issues. It wasn't perfect around Purdy, and he wasn't really able to elevate them. And so I think probably with the rankings that we did with our NFL Top 100, it was justified that he didn't make it. But you're right. I think he's underrated, though, as a player. I mean, 2 NFC championships and a Super Bowl, played well in that Super Bowl enough to win it. I think he is better than people. There's a middle ground with Brock Purdy. I don't think he's as bad as some people think, but I also don't think he's as good as the money says he is or the production. So I think there's some sort of middle ground that we got to come to with him.
Yeah, a lot of good players and a lot of good quarterbacks in this league. So again, if you want to check out the Locked On NFL Top 100, it is everywhere. You can go check it out on the Locked On website as well as on social media. But Louis, I appreciate you joining me, my man. Thank you for awesome conversation. And we have awesome conversation all week long here on Locked On NFL. It's, of course, the madman Tyler Rowland in the morning, who I'm filling in for. He gives you that double shot of espresso. And then you got the barbershop in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. So it's a double dose of Locked On NFL every single day. Louis, again, appreciate you. If you want to go hear more of Louis, go check him out over at the Locked On Eagles podcast. And be sure to stay tuned on Locked On NFL for more NFL content. So stay tuned for all that. And we'll see you right back here soon on Locked On NFL.